the day humans revealed their obsolete fleet and left the galaxy in awe part. Admiral Jack Morrison stood alone at the observation deck of Earth's orbital command station. The vast darkness of space stretched before him, dotted with stars and the occasional flash of a patrolling vessel. His weathered face reflected in the reinforced glass as he studied a small data tablet in his hand. The message had arrived 3 hours ago. After nearly 70 years of being ignored by the greater galactic community, humanity had received a formal invitation to join the Galactic Confederation's Grand Summit. Jack ran his fingers through his gray hair and let out a long breath. The timing couldn't have been more suspicious. "Admiral, you asked to see me?" Jack turned to see Commander Susan Hayes entering the observation deck. Her uniform was crisp, her posture perfect, but her eyes revealed concern. "Yes, Commander, I assume. You've heard the news." Susan nodded, moving to stand beside him at the window. "The invitation to the Confederation Summit, it's all anyone's talking about." "And what's your assessment?" Jack asked, watching her reaction carefully. Susan hesitated only briefly. "It's a trap, sir. Or at least it's not what it appears to be. After 7 decades of treating us like primitive apes, they suddenly want to welcome us into their prestigious gathering? Intelligence reports suggest the Confederation has been monitoring our fleet deployments for years. They've seen nothing that would change their opinion of us." "Precisely," Jack said with a slight smile. "They think we're harmless, a quaint little species playing with outdated technology." He tapped his tablet and a holographic display appeared between them, showing Earth's defensive fleet. To an uninformed observer, it looked unimpressive. Vessels with bulky designs, visible weld lines, and propulsion systems that had been considered standard technology for over a century. The Araxes believe we're still using fusion drives from the 2230s. "The Solari think our best weapons are chemical propellants and mass drivers," Jack continued. "And we've let them think exactly that." Susan studied the fleet projection. "Operation Long Shadow has been in effect for 3 generations. Now, my grandfather helped implement the protocol after the First Contact War." Jack nodded solemnly. That war had nearly ended humanity before they had properly begun their journey to the stars. The attack had come without warning. An alien fleet that had considered Earth's territory to be their rightful expansion zone. Humanity had barely survived, and only through desperate measures and unexpected innovations had they managed to push back the invaders. The lesson had been clear. In a galaxy full of advanced civilizations, being noticed meant being targeted. "Do you know why I asked you here specifically, Commander?" Jack asked, turning to face her directly. "I assumed it was regarding the summit, sir." Jack nodded. "You've been selected to captain the HSS Reliant for our journey to the Arcturus system." Susan's eyes widened slightly. The Reliant was one of Earth's oldest serving vessels, a Liberty-class destroyer that had been in service for over 50 years. It was considered a museum piece by even human standards, kept operational primarily for training purposes. "Sir, with respect," Jack raised a hand. "I know what you're going to say. The Reliant is outdated, undermanned, and would be seen as an insult if we brought it to a gathering of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations." "That was the general direction of my concern, yes," Susan admitted. Jack's expression shifted to one of calculated amusement. "Which is exactly why it's perfect. We're sending our oldest vessels, the Liberty-class destroyers and Frontier-class carriers, ships that haven't seen actual combat deployment in over 50 years. Understanding dawned in Susan's eyes. "We're maintaining the deception." "For now," Jack confirmed. "The Confederation has invited us because they believe we're no threat. They want to study us up close, perhaps establish trade agreements that would be wildly uneven in their favor. What they don't realize is that this invitation is exactly what we've been waiting for." Jack gestured toward the far side of the station, where Earth hung like a blue jewel against the blackness. For 300 years, humanity has been developing along technological lines fundamentally different from the rest of the galaxy. While they focused on conventional energy manipulation and space-time efficiency, we explored dimensional engineering and quantum state preservation. The holographic display shifted, showing hidden facilities throughout the solar system. Vast construction yards built into hollowed-out asteroids, research stations embedded in the clouds of Jupiter, and training facilities hidden beneath the surface of Mars. The real fleet stays hidden, Jack continued. For now. Susan studied the display with new appreciation. How many people aboard the Reliant will know the truth? Just the command crew, Jack replied. We've selected personnel who understand what's at stake. Your first officer will be Lieutenant Alan Price. He's young but showed exceptional aptitude during the Titan simulations. Susan nodded thoughtfully. And our orders at the summit? Observe. Gather intelligence. Let them underestimate us. Jack's expression became serious. But be prepared for revelation. Depending on how events unfold, we may be authorized to implement Protocol Lazarus. The name hung in the air between them. Protocol Lazarus, the contingency plan for revealing humanity's true technological capabilities to the galaxy. It had been developed decades ago but never implemented, as the conditions had never been right. The timing of this invitation concerns me, Susan said. Our deep space sensors have been tracking the anomalies at the galactic rim for years now. The pattern suggests that something is coming, Jack finished for her. Yes. Our scientists believe the Confederation has detected them too, though they likely don't understand what they're seeing. He turned back to the window, gazing out at the stars. Humanity has spent 3 centuries preparing for this moment, Commander. We hid our true capabilities because history taught us that revealing technological superiority often leads to fear-driven aggression. But if these anomalies are what we think they are, the galaxy will need every advantage it can get. Susan straightened her posture, a new determination in her eyes. When do we depart? 3 days, Jack replied. The Reliant and 11 other vessels will form our delegation. We'll take the long route to Arcturus. No sense revealing our actual FTL capabilities just yet. And if the Confederation is hostile? Jack's expression darkened. Then they'll learn that humanity's obsolete fleet is much more than it appears to be. As they stood there, the lights of Earth's orbital defenses twinkled in the distance. Old satellites and defense platforms that had been carefully designed to look functional, but outdated. The perfect camouflage for a species that had learned, through bitter experience, that sometimes the best strategy was to be underestimated. What the Galactic Confederation didn't know, what no alien civilization had been allowed to discover, was that humanity's greatest strength had always been its ability to adapt, to innovate along unexpected paths. And soon, very soon, the galaxy would witness that strength firsthand. The day humans revealed their obsolete fleet and left the galaxy in awe. Part 2. Captain Susan Hayes stood on the bridge of the HSS Reliant as the ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Arcturus system. The view screen showed a spectacular sight. Dozens of vessels representing 27 different species maneuvered through designated arrival lanes. Sleek ships with designs that seemed to defy physics moved with precision around the massive Arcturus station, which glittered like a jewel at the center of the system. Quite a welcoming committee, Lieutenant Alan Price said from his station. The young officer couldn't hide the awe in his voice despite his professional demeanor. Susan nodded but kept her expression neutral. Status report. All systems operating at standard parameters, Alan replied. The other 11 ships in our fleet have successfully arrived and are awaiting escort instructions. Susan studied the alien vessels surrounding them. The contrast couldn't have been more stark. The human ships, with their bulky frames, visible external components, and utilitarian designs, looked like ancient relics next to the streamlined perfection of the Confederation vessels. Captain, called Lieutenant Olivia Garcia from the tactical station, we're being scanned. I count at least 15 different sensor suites actively probing our hull composition and power systems. Let them look, Susan replied calmly. Remember, Admiral Morrison's orders, we run with standard configurations only. The bridge crew exchanged knowing glances. They were part of the small group who understood the true nature of their mission. To the rest of the crew, this was simply a diplomatic journey, albeit an important one. Incoming transmission from the Arcturus station, announced Communications Officer Ben Wilson. Susan straightened her uniform. On screen, the view screen shifted to show an alien with silvery skin and large compound eyes. Human vessels, this is Arcturus Control. You are cleared. For approach to docking ring 7, please maintain your current speed and trajectory. Escort vessels will guide you. Understood, Arcturus Control. We'll follow your lead, Susan responded. As the transmission ended, Science Officer Sam Rogers approached Susan's command chair and lowered his voice. Captain, I'm detecting unusual interest from the Vex Dominion vessels. They've been scanning us more thoroughly than the others, particularly focusing on our power distribution systems. Susan raised an eyebrow. The Vex were known to be the oldest spacefaring race in the Confederation, with technology that supposedly bordered on the mythical. That's interesting. Keep monitoring their activity, but don't make it obvious. Yes, Captain. As the Reliant and the other human ships followed their escort toward the station, Susan couldn't help but notice the barely concealed derision from some of the other species. The Kandar representatives piloting crystalline ships that seemed to change shape as they moved, positioned themselves far from the human fleet, as if proximity might somehow contaminate them. Even more blatant were the Solari Imperium, whose vessels bent light around their metallic surfaces in ways that human scientists had only theorized about, at least officially. Their communications were filled with thinly veiled mockery. Greetings, primitive human vessels, came a transmission from the largest Solari ship. We trust your journey was not too taxing for your outdated propulsion systems. Please be careful, not to scratch the docking ports with your crude hulls. Alan's jaw tightened, but Susan simply smiled. Acknowledge their transmission with thanks, Lieutenant Wilson. Inform them we appreciate their concern for our well-being. They're baiting us, Alan muttered. Of course they are, Susan replied. They want to see how the primitives react. Remember, patience is our greatest ally right now. As they approached the massive space station, Susan took a moment to study it. Arcturus Station was a marvel of engineering, a spinning wheel nearly 20 kilometers in diameter, with extensions that resembled the petals of a flower. Each petal housed representatives from different sectors of the galaxy, with the central hub reserved for Confederation officials and diplomatic functions. Docking procedures initiated, reported Navigation Officer Rick Johnson. Station systems are taking control of our approach vectors. Susan nodded. Allow them full access to navigation systems. Let's be the perfect cooperative guests. The human fleet was directed to a distant section of the station, far from the more prestigious areas where the advanced civilizations were docked. It was a deliberate slight, but one that Susan had been prepared for. Captain, Sam called from his science station. I've completed my preliminary analysis of the station. Its power signature is fascinating. Elaborate, Susan requested. The station appears to be powered by what they call quantum fold reactors. Impressive technology, but he hesitated, making sure only the command crew could hear him. Significantly less efficient than what we're currently using. Their approach to energy manipulation is fundamentally different from ours. Susan nodded slightly. Document everything, but keep your observations in the secured database. As the Reliant docked, with a slight shudder, Susan received a private message on her command tablet. It was from Admiral Morrison, who was aboard the flagship of their small fleet, the HSS Defender. First impressions? The message read. Susan typed her reply carefully. They're exactly what we expected. Arrogant, dismissive, and completely convinced of their superiority. The Vex are showing unusual interest in our power systems. The response came quickly. The Vex have always been the most perceptive. Proceed with caution around them. Ambassador Wright and I will handle the official welcome. Prepare your ship for potential Protocol Lazarus implementation within the next 72 hours. Susan read the message twice. 72 hours. That was much sooner than she had anticipated. She sent a simple acknowledgement and then turned to her crew. We've been invited to the welcome reception in 6 hours. Command crew only. In the Meantime, I want all systems running at minimum power levels. Let's give our hosts exactly what they expect to see: an outdated human vessel struggling to maintain basic functions. And if they ask for tours of the ship? Alan asked. We'll give them carefully guided ones, Susan replied with a small smile. Engineering sections 3, 5, and 7 have been prepared for visitors. The rest remain restricted due to ongoing maintenance issues. The bridge crew nodded in understanding. Those specific sections had been modified to appear even more outdated than they actually were. A show within a show, designed to reinforce the deception. As the docking procedures completed, Susan looked out at the vast station and the array of advanced alien vessels surrounding them. For 300 years, humanity had hidden in the shadows, developing along technological paths that the rest of the galaxy had ignored or abandoned. They had learned patience, caution, and the value of being underestimated. Soon, very soon, the facade would fall away, and when it did, the galaxy would never be the same. The day humans revealed their obsolete fleet and left the galaxy in awe part. 3 Ambassador Nicole Wright stood at the entrance of the Grand Assembly Hall, taking a moment to compose herself before entering. The vast chamber ahead was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, their voices creating a symphony of different tones, clicks, and electronic translations. "Ready, Ambassador?" asked Admiral Morrison, who stood beside her in his formal uniform. Nicole nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be to be insulted by 27 different species." Morrison smiled slightly. "Remember, every condescending remark is proof our deception is working." They entered the hall together, and as predicted, their arrival caused a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Conversations paused momentarily as alien eyes, sensory appendages, and optical implants turned to observe the human delegation. The Grand Assembly Hall was a marvel of architecture. Its domed ceiling depicted a 3-dimensional map of the Confederation territories, constantly updating with ship movements and trade routes. The floor was divided into sections for each member species, with the most influential positioned closest to the central speaking platform. The human section, Nicole noted with well-hidden amusement, was at the very back of the hall. Ambassador, Right Admiral Morrison, greeted a tall, thin alien with pale blue skin. "I am Coordinator Ziv, Head of Diplomatic Relations. Welcome to Arcturus Station." "Thank you for the welcome," Nicole replied with practiced diplomacy. "The human delegation is honored to be invited to this historic gathering." "Yes, we felt it was finally time to evaluate humanity's potential contributions to the Confederation," Ziv said, making little effort to hide the doubt in his voice. "Your section is prepared. The opening ceremonies will begin shortly." As they were led to their designated area, Nicole observed the other species' reactions. Some, like the gelatinous Miroth, showed genuine curiosity. Others, particularly the technologically advanced Solari and Kandar, made no attempt to hide their disdain. Captain Susan Hayes and her command crew from the Reliant joined them as they reached the human section. The captain leaned close to Admiral Morrison's ear. "All preparations are complete, sir," she whispered. "The Reliant is ready for your command." Morrison nodded almost imperceptibly. The opening ceremonies began with a display of light and sound that rippled through the hall. A holographic figure appeared at the center, a composite representation of all Confederation species, symbolizing unity and cooperation. "We welcome all delegates to the 413th Grand Summit of the Galactic Confederation," announced the figure. "For 12,000 years, our union has maintained peace and fostered advancement across known space. Today, we extend our hand to the representatives of Earth, who join us as observers." Nicole noted the careful wording. Not as equals or potential members, merely as observers. The formalities continued for another hour before the diplomatic discussions began in earnest. As the human delegation had anticipated, it didn't take long for their technological capabilities to become the topic of conversation. "The Expansion Committee has reviewed humanity's application for increased trade routes," stated a Solari representative, Arch Commander Ixtavius. However, we have serious concerns about their ability to maintain secure shipping lanes with their current level of technology. Nicole watched as holographic displays showed images of human vessels, carefully selected to highlight their most outdated features. Our analysis of human ships suggests they operate on antiquated fusion principles, Octavius continued. Their most advanced weapons appear to be simple mass drivers and chemical propellants. We must question whether such a primitive species truly belongs in our confederation, even as trading partners. Several species murmured in agreement. The Kandar representative, a crystalline being that sparkled under the hall's lights, added, "Perhaps we should consider a technology exchange program. The humans provide raw materials from their worlds, and we grant them access to basic improvements for their vessels." Nicole felt her face flush with anger but kept her expression neutral. The exchange would essentially turn Earth into a resource farm for the Confederation, while providing technology that humanity had surpassed centuries ago. Admiral Morrison placed a calming hand on her arm. Their moment was coming. The ancient Vex representative Elder Xanthar had remained silent throughout the discussion. Now the being, who resembled a tall, slender humanoid with skin like burnished copper, raised a six-fingered hand. "I would like to hear from the humans themselves," Xanthar said, voice resonating with unusual harmonics. "What do you believe? You can offer the Confederation?" All eyes turned to Nicole and Admiral Morrison. This was the opening they had been waiting for. Nicole stood and approached the speaking platform. "Thank you, Elder Xanthar, for your question, and thank you to the Confederation for your assessment of our capabilities." She paused, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "Humanity does not come to you seeking technological handouts or protection. We come seeking understanding. For too long, our species have observed each other from a distance, making assumptions based on limited information." The Solari Arch-Commander scoffed. "There is no assumption in our analysis. Your vessel's capabilities are clearly observable. Your most advanced ship in orbit around this station has power outputs that our children's training vessels would surpass." Nicole smiled. "Appearances can be deceiving, Arch-Commander. We've brought something to demonstrate. A small exhibition of what humanity considers its obsolete technology." She turned to Admiral Morrison, who nodded and touched a small device on his wrist. "Captain Hayes, you may proceed with the demonstration." Across the hall, view screens that had been showing the surrounding space suddenly shifted focus to the HSS Reliant, positioned at the edge of the diplomatic zone. "What is the meaning of this?" demanded Coordinator Ziv. "Weapons demonstrations are forbidden during the summit." "This is not a weapons demonstration," Morrison assured him. "Simply a revelation of capability." On the screens, the Reliant appeared unchanged, the same bulky, outdated vessel that had drawn mockery upon its arrival. Then, almost imperceptibly, a subtle shimmer passed across its hull. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then alarms began to sound throughout the hall. "Impossible," whispered a Kandar representative staring at a personal data device. "Our sensors are detecting a dimensional anomaly originating from the human vessel." The Solari representatives leapt to their feet, hands moving to communication devices. "This is an attack. Security protocols must be—" "It is not an attack," Elder Xanthar interrupted, voice cutting through the growing panic. The ancient being was staring at the screens with what could only be described as wonder. "It is a controlled dimensional pocket, a technology that we believed impossible outside of theoretical models." On the screens, the space around the Reliant appeared to bend slightly, as if the fabric of reality itself was being manipulated. It wasn't flashy or dramatic, just a subtle distortion that defied the understood laws of physics. "What you are witnessing," Nicole explained to the now silent hall, "is a fraction of the Reliant's true capabilities. The dimensional anchor is merely a byproduct of the ship's actual propulsion system powering up to minimum operational capacity." The silence in the hall was absolute. Every representative, from the most advanced to the most recent additions to the Confederation, stared at the screens in disbelief. 300 years ago, Admiral Morrison said, his voice carrying easily in the quiet, Humanity made a decision after our first violent contact with alien life. We would hide our true technological development, presenting an image of slow, predictable advancement along expected lines. We chose to be underestimated rather than feared. Nicole looked around the hall, meeting the shocked gazes of the aliens who had dismissed humanity hours earlier. The Emergency Council will convene immediately, announced Coordinator Ziv, his previously condescending tone replaced by urgency. All primary representatives are required to attend. As the hall erupted into chaos, Nicole exchanged a glance with Admiral Morrison. The Admiral's expression was grim but satisfied. Phase 1 of humanity's revelation was complete. Now came the hard part. The day humans revealed their obsolete fleet and left the galaxy in awe part. For the emergency session of the Confederation Council convened in a chamber deep within Arcturus Station. Unlike the grand ceremonial hall, this room was designed for serious deliberation. 50 representatives from the most powerful species sat around a circular table, with holographic displays hovering above its center. Captain Linda Peterson stood before them, having replaced Ambassador Wright for this critical meeting. Admiral Morrison sat quietly to one side, observing. The Solari Arch-Commander Ixtavius was the first to speak, his silver skin flushed with an angry blue tint. This demonstration was a clear violation of Summit protocols, he declared. No species is permitted to activate weapons or defensive systems within the diplomatic zone. We activated no weapons, Linda replied calmly. What you witnessed was simply our ship's true power system coming online at 5% capacity. Impossible, said a Kandar representative, her crystalline form shimmering with agitation. Our analysis of your vessel indicated no such capabilities. That was by design, Linda explained. What you saw was the first layer of a deception that humanity has maintained for 3 centuries. Elder Xanthar of the Vex leaned forward, copper-toned face reflecting the light. The humans have been deceiving us all, the ancient being stated. What we witnessed was not a primitive species fumbling with basic technology. That pulse was a controlled, dimensional anchor, something our scientists have theorized but never achieved. Linda nodded respectfully to the elder. The Vex, as the oldest among you, are the first to understand. Yes, for 300 years humanity has maintained the appearance of technological stagnation. She activated a small device, and a new hologram appeared above the table, a timeline of human development. It began as a defensive measure after our first contact wars, she continued. When we encountered hostile forces at the edge of our solar system, we realized that appearing advanced would make us a target for either conquest or elimination. But over time, this deception evolved into something more, a test. The representatives murmured among themselves, some with disbelief, others with growing concern. A test of what exactly? Asked Coordinator Ziv, who chaired the emergency session. Of character, Linda replied simply. We needed to understand how the Confederation would treat those they perceived as weaker or less advanced. Would you offer genuine assistance and partnership, or would you seek to exploit and control? The uncomfortable silence that followed was answer enough. Human, the Miroth delegate bubbled through its translation device. You speak of deception, yet accuse us of exploitation. How do you justify this contradiction? Linda paced slowly around the table. While the Confederation races have pursued efficient energy utilization and space-time manipulation, humans explored entirely different technological paths. We focused on dimensional engineering and quantum state preservation. The fleet you've been scanning and dismissing? Those are indeed our obsolete vessels, training ships we use to teach our cadets the fundamentals of space travel. She paused, before adding, they're powered down to roughly 5% of their actual capabilities. Admiral Morrison stood and joined her. If I may add to Captain Peterson's explanation, our approach was not meant as an insult but as protection. History has taught us that revealing technological superiority often leads to either fear-driven aggression or technological theft, They spoke. Alerts began sounding across the chamber. Displays showed the human vessels in orbit simultaneously activating their true systems. Layers of dimensional camouflage dissolved, revealing ships that were far more advanced than their exterior shells had suggested. Power readings jumped exponentially as dormant systems awakened. "What is happening?" demanded Octavius, rising to his feet. "This is an act of aggression." "It is a demonstration of truth," Admiral Morrison countered. "Nothing more." The readings continued to climb as the sensors attempted to make sense of the energy signatures now emanating from the human vessels. What had appeared to be crude external components rearranged themselves or simply disappeared, absorbed into the hulls through means the Confederation scientists couldn't comprehend. "Our long-range scanners are detecting something else," reported one of the station's officers. "Multiple objects approaching from the edge of the system." Linda exchanged a glance with Morrison. This wasn't part of their plan. "Identification?" asked Coordinator Ziv, tension evident in his voice. The officer looked up in confusion. "They appear to be human vessels, but unlike any we've seen before." New images appeared on the screens, sleek ships with no visible propulsion systems, moving through space in ways that defied conventional physics. They didn't so much fly as slip between points, covering vast distances with minimal energy signatures. "Admiral?" Linda questioned quietly. Morrison's expression was equally surprised, but he recovered quickly. "It appears Earth Command has decided to accelerate the revelation. Those are ships from our actual defense fleet." Elder Xanthar studied the images with intense focus. "Fascinating. They appear to be partially phased between dimensions. A truly elegant solution to the limitations of conventional space travel. We've been watching you for a very long time," Morrison addressed the council. "Learning about your civilizations, your technologies, your ethics. We had to be certain before revealing ourselves fully." "Certain of what?" asked a representative from a smaller, less influential species. "That you wouldn't immediately try to destroy us out of fear," Linda answered honestly. "Or attempt to steal our technology for military advantage." The Confederation representatives looked at each other uneasily. It was clear from their expressions that both possibilities had already been considered by many present. "And now?" Coordinator Ziv asked. "What does humanity want from the Confederation?" "A genuine alliance," Morrison replied, "not based on perceived power imbalances or technological theft, but on mutual respect and cooperation." Linda activated another holographic display, this one showing strange energy patterns at the edge of the galaxy. "There's another reason we've chosen this moment to reveal ourselves. Your scientists have detected anomalies at the galactic rim, correct?" Several representatives shifted uncomfortably. This was classified information that few species were supposed to know about. "Yes," Elder Xanthar confirmed when no one else would. "Strange disturbances in the fabric of space-time. Our best minds have been studying them for nearly a decade. We've been monitoring them for over 50 years, Linda revealed, and we believe they represent a threat greater than any our civilizations have faced before." The display zoomed in on the anomalies, showing patterns that seemed to pulse with unnatural regularity. "These are not natural phenomena," she continued. "They're manifestations of something attempting to enter our reality from elsewhere. Our dimensional research has given us insights that your conventional space-time studies couldn't provide." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank. "And you're suggesting an invasion?" Octavius asked, his earlier hostility tempered by growing concern. "We're suggesting a first contact scenario unlike anything any of us have experienced," Morrison clarified. "These entities don't originate from our universe. They operate under different physical laws, and based on our observations of their attempts to penetrate the dimensional barriers, they are not coming in peace." Linda looked around the table at the representatives. Just hours ago, they had viewed humans as barely worth acknowledging. Now, they hung on her every word. "This is why we've revealed ourselves now," she said. "Not out of arrogance or desire for recognition, but because we need to work together. Our different technological approaches combined may be the only defense against what's coming." As if to emphasize her point, one of the new human vessels positioned itself near the station, giving the Confederation representatives a clear view of its capabilities. It seemed to shimmer between states of matter, neither fully solid nor energy, but something in between. The deception is over, Admiral Morrison concluded. Now the real work begins. The day humans revealed their obsolete fleet and left the galaxy in Part 5. The final day of the summit was unlike any in the Confederation's 12,000-year history. The main observation deck of Arcturus Station was filled with representatives from every member species, all gathered for what had been simply described as a demonstration. Admiral Morrison stood at the center, flanked by Captain Susan Hayes and Chief Engineer Frank Butler from the HSS Reliant. The Admiral had extended a surprising invitation. Representatives from each major delegation were to board the Reliant, the very vessel they had most thoroughly scanned and dismissed upon its arrival. "I understand your concerns," Morrison addressed the gathered aliens. "Just 3 days ago you learned that humanity has been hiding its true technological capabilities. Trust has been damaged. But what we need to show you can only be fully understood by experiencing it firsthand." The Solari Arch-Commander Ixtavius, whose mockery of human ships had been particularly harsh, seemed hesitant. "How do we know this isn't some form of trap?" "You don't," Morrison replied honestly. "Just as we didn't know if coming to this summit was a trap. At some point, genuine cooperation requires a leap of faith." Elder Xanthar of the Vex stepped forward. "I will go. My species has existed for over 20,000 of your Earth years. We have seen civilizations rise and fall. If humanity wanted conquest, they would not have hidden their capabilities for so long." Slowly, other representatives agreed to join the tour. Within an hour, a group of 12 aliens boarded a shuttle bound for the Reliant. Captain Susan Hayes greeted them as they arrived at the ship's main airlock. "Welcome aboard. What you are about to see has never been revealed to non-humans. I ask that you keep an open mind." The interior of the Reliant appeared much as they expected at first. Utilitarian corridors with exposed conduits, manual control interfaces, and equipment that seemed outdated by Confederation standards. But as they reached a sealed door labeled "Engineering, Authorized Personnel Only," everything changed. Chief Engineer Frank Butler placed his hand on a scanner that hadn't been visible moments before. "This is where the deception ends," he said as the door slid open. The aliens stepped into a space that couldn't possibly fit within the dimensions of the ship they had observed from outside. The engineering section stretched before them, vast and filled with technology that defied conventional understanding. Portions of the machinery seemed to exist partially in other dimensions, with components that faded in and out of visibility. "This isn't our most advanced vessel," Frank explained as he guided them through systems that operated partially in alternate dimensions. "The Reliant is actually 76 years old, genuinely obsolete by our current standards." A Kandar representative's crystalline form trembled with what might have been awe or fear. "How is this possible? Our scans showed nothing of this." "Dimensional folding," Frank replied. "We've created pockets of space that exist alongside conventional reality. Your sensors can't detect them because they're tuned to find energy signatures in normal space-time." As they continued the tour, Butler showed them the true heart of the ship, a pulsing core of energy that seemed to bend light around it. "Our approach to physics evolved along fundamentally different lines than yours," he explained. "While the Confederation pursued efficiency in conventional space, we explored the boundaries between dimensions. This allows us to draw energy directly from the quantum foam between realities." The representatives were silent, absorbing implications that challenged their understanding of the universe. Meanwhile, on the observation deck of Arcturus Station, Admiral Morrison continued his discussion with the remaining delegates. When questioned about why humans maintain this elaborate deception, Commander Diana Russell provided the answer. "History taught us that revealing technological superiority often leads to either fear-driven aggression or technological theft. We needed to understand the character of the Confederation before revealing our true capabilities." A representative from a younger spacefaring race raised a limb. "But why reveal yourselves now? Is it solely because of the anomalies at the galactic rim?" "That's a significant factor," Morrison acknowledged. But there's another reason. We've reached the limits of what we can achieve in isolation. Different perspectives lead to different innovations. The Confederation's approach to physics has produced technologies we never developed, just as our focus on dimensional engineering led us down paths you never explored. As he spoke, alerts sounded across the station. The massive viewports showed a new arrival at the edge of the Arcturus system, a single vessel unlike any seen before. It appeared without any detectable faster-than-light transition, simply existing where it hadn't been a moment earlier. The HSS Horizon, Morrison announced, humanity's actual flagship. The vessel defied conventional description. Parts of it seemed solid, while others were translucent or shifted between states. It moved through space not by pushing against it, but by rearranging the fabric of reality around itself. The Horizon can travel between star systems without passing through the intervening space, Morrison explained to the stunned audience. It doesn't move through reality so much as it steps between adjacent possibilities. As the representatives tried to comprehend this, the tour group returned from the Reliant. Their expressions told the story. Even the most skeptical among them had been fundamentally changed by what they'd witnessed. Elder Xanthar approached Morrison slowly, the ancient being's usually composed demeanor replaced by something close to wonder. "You've been watching us all this time," the elder stated, "evaluating whether we deserve to know the truth. Your obsolete fleet has indeed left us in awe, not because of its technology, but because of the patience and foresight behind it." Morrison nodded. "We had to be certain. The path we've walked has given us capabilities that could be devastating if misused." The elder's copper-toned face reflected the light of the distant stars. "And these anomalies, these dimensional incursions, they are truly as dangerous as you claim." "More so," Morrison replied gravely. "They represent beings that exist beyond our conception of life. They don't want resources or territory as we understand them. They want reality itself." The Confederation Council reconvened one final time before the summit's conclusion. This time the human representatives were seated at the center, no longer relegated to the edges. "Humanity doesn't seek dominance or special treatment," Admiral Morrison addressed them. "We've revealed our true technological state because we believe the galaxy faces threats that will require all our combined innovations." He activated a holographic display showing the dimensional anomalies at the galactic rim. "These disturbances, your scientists have been monitoring? We've been studying them for decades. They're expanding, and what lies beyond them is coming." The council chamber was silent as the implications sank in. "We propose a new kind of alliance," Morrison continued. "Not based on technological exchange or trade agreements, but on combining our fundamentally different approaches to science. Your mastery of conventional physics, our understanding of dimensional engineering. Together, we might develop defenses that neither could create alone." As the summit concluded, the human vessels prepared for departure. What had arrived as seemingly outdated hulls now revealed their true nature, ships that operated on principles most of the galaxy had never even theorized. They formed up in a precise formation around the HSS Horizon, and together, without the flashy energy signatures of conventional faster-than-light travel, they simply ceased to be in the Arcturus system. The day humans revealed their obsolete fleet had indeed left the galaxy in awe, not through threats or demonstrations of destructive power, but through the revelation that there were entirely different ways to approach the fundamental laws of reality. And as the Confederation races began to process all they had learned, one thing became abundantly clear: the galaxy would never be the same again.